Welcome to Book of the Mouse Club, episode 14, Monday, December 17th, 2018.
Morning, monsieur.
Where are you off to?
The bookshop. I just finished the most wonderful story about a beanstalk and an ogre and...
That's nice. Marie! The baguettes! Hurry up!
I'm sorry, but how can one possibly pay attention to a book with no pictures in it?
My dear child, there are a great many good books in this world without pictures.
I almost bounced clear out of the book. Some bouncing, huh?
Come home or make myself known.
Jane Thaddeus Turtle, Esquire. Have you never met him? You will find his story in this delightful little book, The Wind and the Willows.
I've come to return the book I borrowed.
Finished already?
Oh, I couldn't put it down. Have you got anything new?
Welcome back to a special Jolly Holiday edition of Book of the Mouse Club. I'm your co-host, Courtney, and I'm joined by my co-host, Emily.
Hey, Courtney, it's supercalifragilistic to be back here on the podcast.
If you haven't picked up on our practically perfect greetings, we're discussing PL Travers Mary Poppins today in honor of the upcoming film Mary Poppins Returns, releasing in theaters later this week. So let's quickly just revisit the back of the book. We read the original Mary Poppins text. There are multiple sequels written by PL Travers, but this is the classic first one, and it says, "From the moment Mary Poppins arrives at number 17 Cherry Tree Lane, everyday life at the Banks house is forever changed. It all starts when Mary Poppins is blown by the east wind onto the doorsteps of the Banks house. She becomes a most unusual nanny to Jane, Michael, and the twins. Who else but Mary Poppins can slide up banisters, pull an entire armchair out of an empty carpet bag, and make a dose of medicine taste like a delicious lime juice cordial? A day with Mary Poppins is a day of magic and make-believe come to life." So there you have it, the original book. Emily, do you want to give us a little overview of the history of Mary Poppins aside from Disney?
Yeah, so before we jump into the text, let's find out a little bit more of PL Travers and how she kind of got inspired to write this story. So, Courtney, I did my research in one of your favorite resources, a Life magazine.
Oh, those special editions.
Yes. So, listeners, if you aren't quite catching our joke, go back one episode to episode 13 on Mickey 90 Life magazine. We had some fun trying to attain some copies, but I was able to get the new Mary Poppins edition that only released, I think, about 2 weeks ago. And it was chock full of information, particularly history. So I'm going to be pulling from there. So let's talk about PL. So PL Travers was originally born Helen Linden Goff in 1899 in Australia. So kind of a fun thing that I learned, thinking, she's a British author. Mary Poppins is a British nanny, but she was born in Australia and spent most of her life there. Her storytelling started when she would tell stories to her younger sisters. She is the eldest, I believe, of 3 sisters, particularly because of her after her father's death from alcoholism, and her mother sank into a deep depression after her father's death because he was the breadwinner, he was a banker. So after him passing away, the family took another big turn. And she was kind of suicidal. So PL would tell lots of stories and keep the siblings occupied while the mother was dealing in her grief. According to PL's biographer, Valerie Lawson, Mary Poppins is modeled after PL's great aunt, Helen, who I believe PL got her namesake from. Helen Moorhead, who raised them after their mother was deemed no longer able to care for PL and her sisters. So this is where the concept of Mary Poppins comes in. She's kind of the saving grace when PL Travers and her sisters did not really have parent figures. And we see those parallels a little bit in Mary Poppins, with Mr. and Mrs. Banks kind of being distant with their kids. I think that's something she draws on, and she has this soft spot for her great aunt, who carried a parrot umbrella and a carpet bag and had and her catchphrase was spit spot. So I think we can see some parallels in there. The Life magazine called these Poppinisms. I think we can start a hashtag trending with Poppinisms. Has a great ring to it. Put PL in a biography. I thought this was very deep and complex. She, in an interview back in the 80s, said that the inspiration had, quote, come up from the same well of nothingness as the poetry, myth, and legend that absorbed me all my writing life. So she's very informed and inspired by her childhood and the hardships that she grew up in. And then Julian Fellows, who wrote the book for the Mary Poppins theatrical musical, kind of interprets what she said there and said it was not the childhood she grew up having wanted. So she made another childhood for herself in Cherry Tree Lane. And then going to where she actually writes Mary Poppins. Before writing Poppins, she was an actress and a poetry writer and short story writer for The Sun and The Triad, which were New England newspapers. From there, she moves to England because she feels like she doesn't fit in Australia. It has too many bad memories, so she wants to start anew. And when she does that, she finds a second father figure, George William Russell, who's a newspaper editor, and started picking up some of her stories. So he's kind of a literary father figure. He reads her writing and inspires her to write these stories full of imagination. Particularly, he thinks she should write about a, quote, witch. So then she begins writing Mary Poppins in 1933. However, it is cited the first Poppins story was actually published in the 1920s in a magazine, and it was called Mary Poppins and the Matchman, which then became the basis for the chapter A Day Out that we read in the original text and would inspire Disney's Jolly Holiday. The book is published by Raynal and Hitchcock. However, she was really nervous about being branded a children's author and thinking that would damage her literary reputation. So that's where we get the name PL Travers. She used the name Pamela as her actress name. And then she wanted to make sure that she could keep some literary acclaim because as a woman, she was afraid that she was only going to be seen as a children's writer and not taken seriously with her poetry and other writings. So she went by P.L. Travers to disguise that it was a female writer because she was afraid of silly women writing silly books. That's what she quoted in an interview. Fun fact that floored me, the illustrations are done by Mary Shepard, who is the daughter of E.H. Shepard, who illustrated A.A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, that's a nice connection. It's been like a little theme this year. The Christopher Robin movie came out. We did an episode about that. And here we are for Mary Poppins Returns. So fun connection. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that father-daughter connection. And you and I were going to talk about the illustrations. So we'll come back to that.
Sure.
And I see some other, you and I were talking earlier, I see some other connections a little bit to the style of Winnie the Pooh. So I wonder if it's something just of this time period in children's literature of how they write that just seems very similar because they did come out around the same time. And then before we transitioned into Disney, this book was very, very popular. A sequel was only released 2 years later in 1935, and then the subsequent came in 1945 and 1952. There were others preceding that, but book sales were not so great after the first three, and that's why P.L. Travers finally gives in to Disney's offer to buy the rights to turn it into a film.
It took him quite a while, though. So Walt Disney's interest in P.L. Travers' work began not long after her initial publication. He first sought the rights in 1938 because his daughters, Diane and Sharon, loved the books. P.L. Travers declined, but Walt was persistent, trying again in 1944 and continuously for several years after. Walt called on her personally in England in the late 1950s, which led to him finally securing the film rights in 1961. And if you've seen Saving Mr. Banks, you'll know that Pamela requested script approval rights, which was a big deal for Walt Disney to relinquish that to her. In the process, Walt enlisted the help of the Sherman Brothers to write the songs for the film. Though they were already on the Disney studio payroll, Mary Poppins is largely considered to be their big break. Richard tells the story that Walt gave him and his brother Robert a copy of Mary Poppins to read and report back to him, just kind of on their thoughts or what they thought would make a good story. And they underlined 6 chapters in her original book that they thought would translate well to film. And it was the same 6 chapters that Walt had envisioned as well. So I thought that was fun that they were all on the same page, quite literally. Richard also shared that Mary Martin, Betty Davis, and Angela Lansbury were all considered for the role. Can you imagine Betty Davis as Mary Poppins? That one seemed a little out of left field to me.
Yeah, I could see Angela Lansbury doing it, but maybe... Did Bedknobs and Broomsticks come after Mary Poppins or before?
It's after, but they are
Okay.
very similar with like the live action animation hybrid.
And she's also a witch doing
Yeah.
magical things and enchanting children.
And Mary Martin originated the role in The Sound of Music, which of course Julie Andrews goes on to. So those two weren't really a stretch for me. I was like, Betty Davis, what? Okay.
Yeah, interesting.
But anyway, now the now iconic Julie Andrews did receive the part, as we know. However, Julie wasn't a well-known actress outside of New York theater at the time. The Sherman Brothers and other Disney executives discovered Julie from The Ed Sullivan Show when she performed a number from Camelot, the Broadway musical she was starring in at the time. And Walt Disney flew out to New York and saw her in the role, where he then went backstage to talk to her about Mary Poppins. As I mentioned before, the writing and approval process of the film is depicted in the 2013 film, Saving Mr. Banks, which was based on the real recordings of Pamela's meetings with the Sherman Brothers and scriptwriter Don DeGraudy. So some of those conversations in the films are lifted from actual recorded tape that she insisted on having present.
I love that part in the film. During the credits,
Yes.
they play some of the actual tape, and I thought that was the coolest thing, that they connected that history and kind of showed that like they did their research, and this is a pretty mostly true story.
Yeah, as you can tell from some of those recordings, Pamela was very particular about the portrayal of her beloved characters. And the film culminates at the Mary Poppins premiere at the Grauman's Chinese Theater with Pamela in attendance. And she did attend, though I think the film ending with her like crying at the screen is a bit ambiguous. Based on the journey of the film, you can probably interpret it as her ultimately loving the final product, but that's not necessarily the case. I found it interesting that the Disney A to Z official entry for her notes that while she admired Walt Disney, she never quite approved of the film he made about her fictional nanny.
Yeah, and the interviews that I read in the Life magazine readings and some other research I was doing on the internet said the same thing, that even though she was in on the script writings and made final approvals on things, she just still was not overly satisfied with what they did with Mary Poppins.
Yeah, that's the crucial piece there, is that she had approval of the script, but not the final film. So things like adding the animation and other pieces she wasn't too fond of, but nothing she could do about it. So she might not have fully approved, but audiences sure did. And the film was one of the highest grossing films of 1964, and it was the Walt Disney Studios' highest grossing film ever at the time. It grossed $31 million domestically, which when adjusted for inflation is about $252 million today. So we will definitely have to see how Mary Poppins Returns compares this season. At the time, it was nominated for 13 Academy Awards and won 5. Best Actress for Julie Andrews, Best Song for Chim Chim Cheree, Best Musical Score, Best Film Editing, and Best Special Effects. And if you thought we were going to make it through this episode without an Byworks reference, think again.
Yes.
Petro Valos and Edsworth E. Poole received a Special Scientific Academy Award for their technology that allowed the live-action actors to interact with the animated characters in the film. So I came across that in my research, and I was like, oh, there he is, a Byworks, always working him in there somehow.
You look at that evolution from the Alice comedies in
Yeah.
the 1920s to now we have 40 years later that animation and live action more seamlessly pieced together, and that they can actually interact, like how Mary holds like a penguin's hand.
Those special effects still hold up, honestly. Like
They
that
do.
was cutting edge at the time, but then rewatching it over the years, I'm like, no, that is still really impressive, especially considering they don't have computer animation or things like that to help superimpose.
Well, actually, speaking of that, so jumping a little bit forward, but with the new release of Mary Poppins Returns, I read some article about its release, but the animation portion that we've seen in the trailers, the director added that it is hand-drawn. They wanted to go back to and kind of give a nod to the original Mary Poppins and how they used that technology, and they brought back our animators from Beauty and the Beast and from other high-grossing hand-drawn films to have the best of the best do the hand-drawn section. So we will see some hand-drawn animation, fans. It's going to happen.
I'm so excited for that one. I hadn't really just thought that it would be in there. Like, I was just like, oh, Mary Poppins is coming out. And then when the animation popped up in the trailer, I was like, oh my gosh, of course it has to have an animation sequence. Like, I just wasn't thinking about it. And that made me very on board with the film. But to wrap up our Disney section, there is one more part we have to talk about, and that is, of course, the stage production. So prior to her death in 1996, Pamela relinquished the rights to a stage production in 1993, and the rights were obtained by veteran theater producer Cameron Mackintosh, already well known for his work producing Phantom of the Opera, Les Mis, and Cats. And kind of like she had script approval requirements, she did have some demands here, and that were that the creators were to be English, and no one who worked on the Disney film would be involved. So
even though Disney owns the theater company that produced it,
let's get there.
Okay.
Cameron Mackintosh is independent and purchases it in 1993. So Disney theatrical productions, I don't even think had started yet, because the first one is Beauty and the Beast. And that's, I believe, like 1994, 1996, when Disney theatrical productions really ramps up.
Know what I'm thinking of?
The Lion King.
I'm thinking of like the revival, I guess, of Mary Poppins as a Broadway musical. Not as a stage production. So
we're getting there.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. That's what I'm trying to say is that Cameron realizes that Mary Poppins is synonymous with the Disney film. So yeah, it's a little confusing. Like this was new to me. He had the rights as early as 1993, but was just kind of sitting on them. I mean, dude was a busy man with Cats and all those big Andrew Lloyd Webber shows. So he has the rights. Pamela passes away in 1996, and he kind of comes to realize Mary Poppins is synonymous with the Disney film and the Sherman Brothers songs, so he approached Disney Theatrical Group about creating a stage adaptation in 2001. So for almost 10 years, he was holding the rights. So it's kind of like the key and the lock come together.
Okay.
Mackintosh has the rights. Disney, you can't do it without Disney. So it's a little against Pamela's wishes, but I guess it's up for interpretation. She said no one who worked on the film could be involved, whether that means just Disney as a whole. I don't know. She had passed away. But true to Pamela's wishes, the director, choreographer, scriptwriter were all English. Some of the Sherman Brothers songs were used, but British music and lyrics team George Stiles and Anthony Drew were brought in for new numbers and adaptations of the original song with the Sherman Brothers' blessing. So if you've seen the musical, like Supercalifragilistic, the number's a little different. So they were drawing on the Sherman Brothers, but those two are credited as like the actual music people behind the musical. So as a result, the show is not a direct adaptation of the Disney film, and it does incorporate more elements from the original books. The show first opened on September 28th, 2004 at the Bristol Hippodrome in England and moved to London's West End on December 15th. 2 years later, it premiered on Broadway on November 16th, 2006 at the New Amsterdam Theatre, and it was nominated for 7 Tonys and won Best Scenic Design of a Musical, and the Broadway show closed in 2013 after 2,619 performances. So yeah, a little confusing, but a really interesting journey. I was glad that I took the time to look up some of that history, because I was just like, oh yep, Disney made a musical of it, but no, there's some involvement on behalf of Pamela.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it stretched all the way back to the 90s. I just only remember when it hit Broadway, but I was in middle school, so I wouldn't really have been paying attention to shows before then. Did you see the musical?
I did. Did you?
I have not. So now that you mentioned it has more of the elements from the book, I'm super curious.
I saw it on tour in Baltimore. Like when my mom and I had a subscription when the different shows would come through. So we saw it somewhere between, we started in 2007 and stopped in like 2012 or so. So somewhere in that span it came through. But yes, it didn't 100% feel like the Disney movie. I certainly hadn't like read the book at that time. But I was like, oh, this is different. So yeah, it'd be fun to go see it if it ever comes back around now that we're a little more familiar.
Yeah, and I'll definitely have to listen to the soundtrack.
Yeah.
To see the Sherman Brothers influence.
So kind of on that note, let's jump into the book. We've established that we are very familiar with Walt Disney's Mary Poppins, but correct me if I'm wrong, this was your first time reading the book as well. What were your expectations or what you were looking forward to jumping in?
Yep, this was my first time reading the book. It's been on my to-read list for a while, so I'm glad we got around to it and I can finally cross that off my list. I was expecting the adventures that we saw in the movie, and they were there, and I was very pleasantly surprised to revisit those in text, so that was kind of fun.
Yeah, I had wanted to read this one as well for a while. I remember when they built like a brand new library by my dad's house. I think I checked, like this is in middle school, I checked out the book and then I never read it. Like I just didn't get around to it.
We've had those moments.
Yeah,
okay.
Guilty. So I've had a long-standing interest, but kind of just put it off. And then as I got older, I was like, oh, well, it's a kid's book. But I think that's the fun thing about our podcast is that we're revisiting some of those younger things that we wouldn't necessarily pick up. So for me, I knew that it would be a little different from the film. I think just having seen the national tour of the Broadway production and being like, all right, well, there's some different source material here, and just what we've gathered from history over the years and Saving Mr. Banks. I wasn't quite sure like what else we'd see in there, but it was a fun journey on the way.
Yeah. So what were some things, though, like you said, that you knew it was going to be a little different, but what was something unexpected, something that took you by surprise?
I think the difference in Mary's personality really wasn't what I expected. I knew that from Saving Mr. Banks, PL Travers does kind of harp on like she's supposed to be tough and stern with the children, but she was kind of mean to them. I was texting Doug, I was reading while we were at the gym, and he's like, how's it going? And I said, Mary Poppins keeps gaslighting the children. And he's like, are you using that word correctly? He's like, do you mean, she keeps making them question their sanity or whether things are real? And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I mean. I mean, she does it in the film at one point after they go on their jolly holiday, and they're like, Mary Poppins, you want a horse race? And she's like, I certainly did no such thing, me and a horse race. But it's like every other chapter in the book, they're like, oh, we went to the zoo and you met the snake. And she's like, no, I would never. And you're like, just let them have their fun. Like, you're gonna drive these kids crazy.
Yeah, I think in the film, also because we can see her and there's like more facial direction. Like when she says that, she says it, but then she kind of like gives a sly smile.
Yes.
Like, we're not talking about it. Mm-hmm. And the kid's like, oh, okay. But yeah, in the book, she's just like, she's very standoffish. She's a lot more vain.
Yeah.
With her appearance than I realized, or than Julie Andrews had portrayed her.
Because there's that moment where she's primping in the mirror as she unpacks. But here, there were several references to her essentially checking herself out in the mirror as she like walks by a store. So just quite a different characterization.
But still just as beloved.
Yeah.
The kids still were crazy about her.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty cool.
Anything else that stuck out to you?
Jane and Michael have twin brother and sisters.
True. They just...
There's more kids.
Yeah, but they didn't really do anything in the book. So I was like...
They had a chapter.
Right. But as I started reading, because I remember when we read the back of the book, we quite literally went, the twins, when we read that description, like, where did they come from? So as I started, I was like, all right, well, they're like toddler. No, they're infants.
Yeah, because there's a whole chapter about, I thought it was an interesting chapter, kind of this idea of like when you're that young, everything's possible. But then when you hit the age of 1 or 2, you forget and you start to realize the world is the way it is. So they get a chapter where
they were in their cribs, and it's kind of like Mary Poppins has the ability to understand them, and they're talking, and they talk to a bird who's at their window, but the bird's like, oh, very soon you won't be able to understand me. And once they hit around their first birthday, they do just start speaking nonsense or losing that. So that was an interesting concept that like, oh, children can perceive much more when they're in that infant state. So I could understand why they were cut out of the film, because really other than that one chapter, they don't do anything, though I'm sure in the subsequent sequels they probably age and accompany them. in their
Yeah,
adventures.
I'd be curious to see how they grow up. But that was one that when I first started reading it, like you said, when we read the back of the book, and then as soon as I started reading, I was like, there's 4 Banks children.
Where do they come from?
I know, right?
But for the purpose of the film, it totally made sense to me as I was reading.
Yeah, most of the time they're just being pushed in the pram, and that's all you hear of them is Mary Poppins pushing the pram, the twins sucking on their foot.
Yeah, they don't need to pay children for that, for the movie. But within the reading, were there any themes or ideas that like stood out to you? Since it kind of was, I think we've alluded to a little bit more of these vignettes, kind of hopping around through different stories, not necessarily a linear plot.
Yeah, so it was kind of hard to pin down like a major theme the way the film does with like family and togetherness. But I think something that kind of strung throughout all of the mini adventures was just that, what you lose when you grow up.
Mm-hmm.
That, you lose a little bit of magic, or you don't believe in everything that you see. So like when Jane and Michael try to tell their parents about their fun adventures and stories, they're like, oh, yeah, I guess that's part of your imagination. And they're kind of like brush it off, their children's stories. They're like, oh, they're just stories. It's not real. So you kind of, as you grow up, you lose a little bit. But Mary Poppins, she's kind of like a Peter Pan in a way.
Yeah. She's an adult, but it's revealed that she has kind of these additional powers. Like she can understand animals and talk to them. So she's just kind of of another world almost.
Yeah.
And I'd agree that for me, it was like that idea of growing up. I kind of almost saw it as like growing up is necessary, but you don't have to lose some of that whimsical spirit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I saw, some parallels to Peter Pan in that. But that in Mary Poppins embraces both worlds, that you can be a grown-up and a kid, which may be why Walt enjoyed it so much.
That's true. We'll have to read Peter Pan at some point and bring it all back together.
Ooh, that would be fun. I have read the original text of Peter Pan.
Okay.
It is very interesting. We'll save that for another episode. So moving forward, did you see anything that you think related back, speaking of families, to Travers' struggles with family? Did you see that coming through in the book?
Now, I feel like Saving Mr. Banks focused on the father figure in particular. Like you mentioned that she lost her father at a young age, and most of the flashbacks that we see in Saving Mr. Banks are about the father himself and like his whimsical spirit, and then his descent into alcoholism, the loss of him is mostly like 2/3 of that film. It's kind of like the final act is when her aunt shows up, and that's the inspiration for Mary Poppins. I was expecting a little more about the father figure because there's such a good line in that film where they're like, oh, Mary Poppins is there to save the children, and PL Travers is taken aback, and she's like, she's not there to save the children. And they're like, oh, she's saving Mr. Banks. It's the dad title. I was like ready to have a very strong father figure in there, but he was largely absent. So I'm curious if it's more of a theme in the subsequent sequels. I saw a little more of a struggle with the mother in this one. Like in the chapter that we mentioned with the twins, the mother comes in and it's kind of making fun of, like, she thinks she knows what they need because all she hears is baby babbling and crying, but they're actually talking and saying stuff, and kind of making fun of the fact that she doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, same. I was thinking of the same line in Saving Mr. Banks, that Walt, and I guess they got that from some of the tape recordings that they based the movie on, that Travers had this need to show Mr. Banks as a big figure. But you're right, maybe it's more, since we're going to get to the movie, but the film is kind of a compilation of things from other Mary Poppins books as well. So maybe you're right, maybe that shows through in some of the others. Because, yeah, Mr. Banks really wasn't as present in the book. I think you only interact with him 2 or 3 times.
He puts the advertisement in the newspaper calling for a nanny, and maybe he's mentioned in relation to, like, the bank that he works at.
Yeah, the children do go visit him for tea, but there wasn't, like, any big to-do. The children don't have any, like, my father doesn't fly kites with me or, wants to spend time with me. So there's really not that, like, struggle between the kids and the father like I thought there would be, but yeah, maybe it comes out in the other books.
You do see a lot more of the mother, which is also true of the Broadway show. I remember like they wrote out that whole sister suffragette piece because that's not part of the book. She is a mother. She just has a lot on her hands. I think they're of a certain wealthy stature where it would be normal to have a nanny. Like, that's not unheard of.
Can we touch on that for a second?
Yeah.
So the setting was very interesting. It's different because I feel like the film, it's more in that early 1900s, but the book talks about taking a bus and driving in cars and turning on the electric switches. So I feel like it's a little bit later. So it's more closer in the 20s or 30s.
Like within the time that she was actually writing it.
Exactly. So you wouldn't see that suffragette thing, but also the way she talks about Cherry Tree Lane in the book is that it's the smallest house on the lane and it is in need of a new coat of paint and new furniture. So I kind of got this feeling of like they're living not like a lie, but they are kind of wannabes. They made it to Cherry Tree Lane.
Yeah.
But they could only just make it to the smallest house. Yeah, they have a cook and they have a maid, but that means that they couldn't pay for the repairs. So they're like picking and choosing, trying to keep up, like kind of keeping up with the Joneses.
Yes, they're like on the fringe of wealth. So like they've made it, but they're not like as well off as they are in the film. And like you can kind of see that the mother is the one that is present for Mary Poppins hiring, and she asks for references and Mary Poppins dismisses it and says like, oh, asking for references is out of fashion, like tapping into the fact that Mrs. Banks would want to be on the cutting edge. And, oh, I didn't realize, well, if it's out of fashion, sure, of course, you're hired.
Which is why I think she's so obsessed with keeping her engagements and having the children engaged, because she's trying to put her family. Mr. Banks is doing the piece in the financial world, and she's got to do the social world to
climbing in society.
Exactly. So I saw that coming through, and I thought that was interesting. But we get some of those details in the film, but not quite about like social stature of like trying to rise up, but just that the parents have their own wants and needs.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you want to take a moment to talk about the illustrations, as we alluded to, since there's a connection to Winnie the Pooh?
Yeah, I was so excited to read that when I was like, oh my gosh, Shepherd. And like, I didn't pay attention to it when I looked at the title page and I saw Shepherd. I kind of forgot. But then when I read that article and it said it's the daughter of the same illustrator for Winnie the Pooh, I had suddenly all these connections to Winnie the Pooh. And I love the illustrations. I think they're whimsical and they have a very similar feel.
Yeah, I would say the Winnie the Pooh ones are a little more like rough sketches. Like you get quite a few pencil lines, whereas these seemed a little more clean and cartoony, but still like very simplistic and appropriate for a children's book. But like a children's novella, not a picture book, but where there's just little images in relation to the chapters. Like what, there was maybe like 2 per chapter?
Yeah, 1 or 2 per chapter, and not a ton that were like a full page. There were some that just took a corner or like a half a page. But yeah, it is a little more cartoony. I'm looking closely at the people drawings, and they're not quite as detailed or kind of old-fashioned-y looking as the ones in Pooh. But yeah, so a very simplistic line, and the shading is similar. It's all done in pen.
Yeah.
So it's got that like cross-hatching look.
Yes.
And I love it. I love these kinds of illustrations. So it must have been either she's inspired by her father, which I would imagine seeing his drawings. But it's just very fitting. It seems so appropriately English.
Yeah, and I believe I mentioned kind of a similar book or similar style when we talked about Winnie the Pooh, and that's E.B. White's Stuart Little. And I remember that having similar illustrations as well, where it's just a little vignette from the chapter, like illustrated as a break in the page. So I believe that was probably published around the same time.
Yeah, so maybe it's just characteristic of the style of the time, which I'm a fan. I am a fan. So did you have a favorite illustration?
I like the one where it's like Mary Poppins kind of surrounded by a vignette, like what would be kind of like a portrait of Mary Poppins, and just her face with like the hat, and she looks happy. And at the end of the book, she gives Jane a picture, and I like to think that it's that picture, or at least that's what I pictured in my mind.
Oh, I like that idea.
So what was yours?
Mine, I'm a big fan of the Jolly Holiday full page.
Yes.
Because I guess that connection to the film, I love that Mary doesn't look like Mary that we see in the film, but Bert's got the striped jacket with the straw hat, and there's a carousel in the background. So there were some good memories of that. No penguins, though.
No.
Regular waiter. No penguin waiters.
I kept like picturing a penguin in my mind when the waiters started talking, and I was like, then I saw the illustration of the waiter, and I was like, oh no, he's just a regular man. There's nothing indicating that these are penguins. So an interesting interpretation on Disney's part.
And another favorite of mine was the illustration of St. Paul's.
Yes, very iconic with the scene in the film.
Yeah, and with the birds flying around it, it just looks, it's actually one of the less cartoony looking. It kind of looks like it could stand in an adult book. It has a mature look to it because the architecture is spot on. And I visited St. Paul's twice, and it's one of my favorite spots in London. So I kind of had a small little personal connection. I've gone to the top of the dome and walked around outside and saw the 360 view of the city. So I felt like, oh yeah, I know what the birds are seeing when she's describing how they're flying around. So I really enjoyed.
But did you feed the birds?
No.
Gotta go back.
I didn't have
feed
tuppence.
the birds.
I didn't have tuppence.
Just bring some breadcrumbs yourself. Save yourself a tuppence.
Right. So yeah, any other reminders to Pooh? The vignettes kind of stood out to me also, how it's
yeah, I'd say just
episodic.
The way that it's interwoven with the text. And I think we talked about this in Pooh as well, where it felt like you could read a chapter and then put it down because they stand alone. Like it's a good bedtime story because you're not like, oh, what happened in the previous chapter. There's not too much cross-referenced. It's like just little episodes.
And the first and last chapter bookend the whole thing. So the first chapter in both Pooh and Mary Poppins, you meet the character and how they got there. Then the last chapter is the going away. But then all the adventures in between you can read independently. And so it does make for a good children's book that you can read pieces, put it down, pick it up another night. So Courtney, what was your favorite part?
I think we might have the same favorite part just based on the way you were talking about the illustration. But I really enjoyed the Jolly Holiday chapter. Surprisingly, there's not much of Bert in this book.
There's not.
He doesn't have a large presence, and he never meets the children at all.
And he's also not a chimney sweep.
Right.
He's a matchman.
So he does do his drawings, and so I did like how that proceeded in the book, even though like the children weren't there for it. And that's that, he's collecting money and such, but hasn't really made much that day. But he's supposed to take Mary Poppins out to tea. Like she has off at 2 p.m. on that day of the week, and she goes off from 2 to 5 away from the children and meets up with Bert, which I found quite interesting. And they're supposed to go to tea, and he's like, oh, sorry, I can't afford to take you to tea, but instead takes her into one of his drawings. So I was like, I see the similarities to what transpires in the film, but it was kind of nice to see a solo side of them. They do go off when they venture into the picture, but just without the children present at all was interesting to me.
Yeah, I liked that, and I always thought I wanted to see more of Bert. But yeah, so that was interesting. I did like Jolly Holiday, but I'm going to talk about 2 others.
All right.
Or actually, the Feeding the Birds was my favorite. I've always had a soft spot for that section of the film, but also I did like the chapter of how they describe the birds and the woman who feeds them. And it's not, unlike the film, it's not like a contention point between the kids and their father. Like, they do get to feed the birds. Yeah. They do spend their money. There's no problem of putting the tuppence in a savings account. They actually get to
tuppence.
And it seems like from how it's written, the children do this frequently.
Yeah.
They know the woman knows them. They go every week or every time they pass St. Paul's, they take a minute and feed the birds. So I just really enjoyed that, and the illustrations around that were nice. And how they talked about the birds flying in circles and swooping down. I just really liked it, and it brought back good memories of that part of the book. I also enjoyed a new one, the gingerbread.
Yeah.
We went and bought gingerbread from the sisters and their very old mother. It was a little weird, but I liked the stars.
Yeah.
So all
Why
the
don't you
gingerbread
describe
has
it?
these. Right, so they sell this gingerbread, which is supposed to be the most delicious gingerbread in all of London. And when they get to the shop, they didn't see it. It's kind of almost like Leaky Cauldron popping up in Harry Potter. Like, you only see it if you know to look for it. So, like, they walk down the street and suddenly there's this store there that they've never seen, even though they've walked that street so many times. But with Mary Poppins, new things happen.
Of course.
And they go in, they buy all this gingerbread. And the children are like, it's the most delicious gingerbread they ever had. And all of it comes with these gold stars on it. And then the kids remark, they're like, oh, we've had gingerbread with gold stars. And they've been collecting these gold stars. And they don't know why there are stars on the gingerbread. But then there's this cute thing at the end where Mary Poppins takes the stars from the gingerbread they ate that day and goes back out with the baker and her daughters. And they glue the stars back in the sky. And I liked that the illustration of them on the ladder gluing stars in the sky. And it kind of seems so fanciful, like gluing stars in the sky. Why would you ever do that? But I thought it was fun.
That was another good illustration with them just like sticking the stars in the sky and on the ladder.
Yeah, and the idea of the children were constantly guessing. So like every chapter ends with the kids thinking, like, was it real? Was it not? Like you were saying.
Because she gaslights them.
Hashtag Mary Poppins gaslighting. Poppinisms.
That's not a Poppinism. That's just an observation.
But they're like, okay, are the stars actually stars, or are there actual just gold paper in the sky? So like they're questioning what stars are. And it was just such a pure child moment that I really enjoyed.
Did you have a least favorite part?
I don't know if I would say anything was like least favorite, but there were some adventures that just didn't stand out as much. John and Barbara, the twin story.
Yeah, it felt misplaced, kind of.
Yeah, they kind of came out of nowhere. I like the message a lot, but I think you could have gotten that same message from other adventures they had. Oh, the chapter I was talking about with the gingerbread is Mrs. Corey. She's a character that's not in the film. So yeah, I think John and Barbara's piece, the twins, was a piece that I could have done without.
I just didn't like that she gaslighted the children. Just really stuck with me.
So many times.
So many times. I was like, are you guys going to be okay? Like, is your reality distorted?
All right, so I'm going to transition to talking about the movie a little bit.
Yeah.
By talking about the stories we did see in the book that did make it into the film. Because some of those were great, but they were a lot shorter in the book than they got time for in the film.
One that stuck out to me, this was actually a little longer, or maybe just as much developed, was when they go to visit the uncle and they're laughing and end up on the ceiling. But Bert wasn't there. But you still have Mary Poppins and the children, and they can't stop laughing and they end up on the ceiling.
Yeah, and then but it's still not as quite of a big part of the book as it was in the film.
I guess that's because you get a whole song.
That's true.
Like with the absence of music, it doesn't feel as prevalent.
Yeah. But most of the iconic things that we see, like the medicine and the carpet bag, they all happen in the first 2 chapters.
Yes.
They happen so quickly. So like I was really, really involved. I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I remember this. And then it was all new stuff, which was cool, but I kind of wish it was more spaced throughout.
Yes, because she flies in with the wind and she rides up the banister, and I'm like, okay, yep, I can picture that exactly. And she's unpacking and pulling things out of the bags. I was like, I see where they're going with this. But then, like you said, there's different adventures that were completely left out. So I had mentioned that there were about 6 that they underlined. So I wonder what really spoke to them in certain chapters over others, because I think there's stuff that would have worked in the film as well.
So let's jump down to that question. I think we're going to talk about this later, but what was something that you read that you wish kind of got in the film?
I liked, there's a scene, it's actually Mary Poppins' birthday, and they go to the zoo. And so there's different interactions with the animals at the zoo. So I think that would have been a nice opportunity, another opportunity for live action and animation. Like I could picture Disney-style animals interacting with them.
That was a cool chapter. So to give a little more context to our listeners, it's Mary Poppins' birthday, and whenever her birthday falls on a full moon, the zoo gets all topsy-turvy, where there's people in the cages and the animals are observing the people, and it's all sorts of topsy-turvy. So yeah, I could see some fun animation we said, happening there.
I had another one that I enjoyed that would have been fun for film, but I could see this was actually kind of a longer chapter. So I feel like it would have slowed down the plot of the movie, but it would have just been fun to see happen. And that's that they have a neighbor and her dog, like, it's basically, I didn't realize this was the thing back then, but she's like a full-on dog mom, which I love me some dog moms. I wish I had a dog and I would totally be a dog mom. But like one of the people that dresses up their dog. And I was like, I didn't realize
that was a good chapter.
A thing back in the day that like people bought outfits for their pets, which, like, no judgment. My mom does that with her dog. So I just pictured my mom's dog because I think it was a terrier, much like hers. Anyway, the dog, it turns out Mary Poppins knows that the dog can talk. So like when the dog is barking, she knows what the dog is saying. And he's basically like, I don't like living here and I don't like wearing these outfits. And he runs away. And of course, the lady who owns him is like completely distressed. Like I would be, if I had a dog, I would be distraught if I lost my dog. So very empathetic there. But the dog comes back and he's like, Mary Poppins starts translating for the dog. And he was like, I'm not coming back unless you like don't dress me up in these clothes. And he brings another dog back who's not to the same pedigree, like a dog off the streets. And he's like, I'm not coming back unless you let my other dog friend come back too. Like the dog is negotiating with its owner. And I just thought that would have been cute to see Disney tackle.
They got a little bit of that in there because it's Andrew, the little dog in the sweater, that shows them where Uncle Albert lives.
Yes. And I believe Dick Van Dyke as Bert mentions him when the film opens and he's like talking to those people in his little like one-man band thing.
Yeah, so we see the dog a little bit, but you're right. I would have more of Andrew would have been great.
Yeah, just
he's a cute piece.
I just loved the idea of the dog negotiating with its owner through Mary Poppins as the interpreter.
A piece I liked was at the end. I liked the Christmas shopping. I thought that was fun, and I could see if they had that in the film or just shopping in general. Maybe not go with a full-on Christmas theme, but, you know, the kids pass a toy store and they go in. That I loved how just childlike and innocent it was that they're picking out Christmas presents for their siblings, but it's things like, oh, I'll get her, the twins, this book because Jane wants to read the book, not because she wants to give it to the twins. So, and like buying glasses for a person who doesn't use glasses. Like it's just very kid-like where they're just picking random things that they think are fun. But I could see in the film that kind of like when they're cleaning up the nursery, that Mary Poppins, you know, makes toys come to life when they walk by them and things like that. So I think a toy store would have been fun.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to talk about the characters themselves a bit? I know we talked kind of about Mr. and Mrs. Banks and a little bit about Bert, but I feel like the children were very similar to how they're portrayed in the book.
Yeah. Michael was stubborn and a little ornery, so he was kind of like that pouty little kid.
And then Jane's kind of like a little bit of a know-it-all, or like the older sister. So they felt very familiar and spot on to me.
I think they were a little younger, though, or at least Michael.
Yeah.
I think was younger in age than what they portrayed him in the film.
Though I believe they do grow up through the series, so it makes sense that if they were like kind of taking some other pieces.
Okay, yeah, I can agree with that. So I like their interactions, and I feel like you see a little bit of an arc for Jane, where like after Mary Poppins leaves, you see her tuck Michael into bed, and she's like, no, Michael, you can keep the picture by your bed tonight. So she grows up a little bit and takes on a little bit of a Mary Poppins role. So I think we see a little bit of a character arc for Jane.
Yeah. But like we said, Bert's just not really in it, and I wish he had been. I'm curious if he's in any of the sequels, or like what made them really take to Bert to fully develop him in the film.
Yeah. What did you think of Mr. and Mrs. Banks? We touched on them a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Mrs. Banks was completely different. I think that's a point of contention in Saving Mr. Banks. Like, Pamela is very dismissive of the idea of having her as a suffragette. But the scriptwriter is kind of like, well, why does she need a nanny? Like, they don't see the need for a nanny in the book, so they try to like give her an excuse to be absent in the film.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, she was pretty different.
I guess trying to make her out to be that socialite was maybe a little too complex for film, but, you know, she's out on the picket lines.
Yeah.
It's also the 1960s. It's American film. Protest was huge. So, like, I feel like we could have identified with that, like, oh, being out on the picket lines. Yeah, you're out there a lot.
Getting right into...
Not women's rights, civil rights, but...
It's at the forefront almost, I guess, of, like, the women's right movement.
Yeah,
so
the second wave.
It starts coming in there. Yeah, but that was definitely a very different choice for the film.
And Mr. Banks, I think we see him the least.
Yeah, so I'd be very curious if he's in the other books as well, and that's more where, like, his characterization comes from in the film.
Yeah, because in this first book, like, he doesn't seem like such a terrible father. He's the breadwinner, so he's working all the time. But he's not, like, standoffish about his kids or, you know, refuses to play with them. He has tea with them. He invites them to work, and the kids happily go. So it doesn't seem like they're as at odds with each other. But, yeah, I think a lot of the questions we'd have to read more of the series.
Yeah, I'd be open to doing that in the future at some point. Was there anything, though, based on what you do know, that you think that Disney did better in the film?
I like that the Disney film had an overall plot.
This is fair.
Not quite. It was still episodic, but...
No, but there's a
theme.
Yeah, there's a motivation.
Yeah, so maybe not a plot, but there's a motivation
No, there's a plot.
Well, yeah, but it's not like, you know, some tragic thing that they have to solve. It's the plot of bringing the family together, so it's not quite...
And I think the film culminates so nicely in the Let's Go Fly, a kite number.
There's no kites in the book.
I know.
I wanted to see a kite, but it turns out the kite thing is in Mary Poppins Comes Back, because I read the back of the book for Mary Poppins Comes Back, and she...
family, or just that they fly kites?
Just there's a kite. She comes back on the tail of Michael's kite.
Oh, that's cute.
So, and I think they open with that with this Mary Poppins Returns. She comes back on the tail of Michael's son's kite. So they're skipping generations, but they're pulling a little bit from the sequel.
I just love that scene. I think also just because of Saving Mr. Banks, that's the moment, though it might be fictitious, in the film where, like, PL Travers really starts to come around when they start performing Let's Go Fly a Kite for her, and, like, she gets up and dances with the scriptwriter, and I definitely got choked up.
Oh, same. And it's right around the time where they all make the connection of it's about saving the family, not saving the kids.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Saving Mr. Banks really made me appreciate Mary Poppins more. I mean, we grew up with it. I loved Mary Poppins, but, like, after seeing that movie, I was like, wow, this is a really, really good movie.
No, same. And that's why you and I also, when we were planning this episode, we're like, we're going to be spending probably half the episode talking about history, because there's so much more behind it than just Disney made a half live action animation film.
Yes, it's such an interesting history. And, like, honestly, I did struggle with that a bit with Saving Mr. Banks at first, because I feel like I've mentioned it. I still am, a little nerd who would read IMDb trivia in the spare time, or, like, I'll read Wikipedia, because it's just interesting to me. I love movie trivia, especially Disney trivia. And I knew I had read the trivia for Mary Poppins, like, years before, and I was like, oh, the author didn't like the book. Like, that's mentioned several times in the IMDb trivia. So I saw Saving Mr. Banks 3 times in theaters, and the first time I went and saw it with my mom, and I left a little unsettled, because I was like, ooh, but she didn't really like the movie, and this ending kind of insinuates that she does. Like, you know, I got choked up and swept up in the movie, but I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. And then I went and saw it with my dad, because that's what you do when you're a child of divorced parents.
You get 2 of everything.
You get 2 Disney movies. I went and saw it with him, and I was like, you know what? This is a Disney film. So, like, when I absolved myself of the fact that, like, okay, it's not going to be a documentary. It's not supposed to be 100% factual. It is supposed to make you feel good and take you on a journey, and it is a Disney journey with a feel-good message. I was like, all right, I'm on board. I'm ready for this, and ended up seeing it again with Doug that same movie season. And so I was like, all right, no, I really do like it. And when you put all of the factual inaccuracies aside, I love the family message that I do feel, as I was saying, enhances Mary Poppins, the film itself.
Yeah, I think you and I are on the same page about that. Because they did the vignettes thing, like you have all those mini adventures in the film, but having that underlying message, which maybe, like we've been saying throughout this whole thing, comes through if you read the entire series of Mary Poppins. But just in the original book itself, it's a great story of mini adventures, not quite just all tied together.
A whimsical journey, and I could see why that would appeal to Walt. It's something that's easily adaptable.
Oh, he had so much to work with.
Right, exactly. You can't be expected to be like, oh, you have to include everything from the story, like Alice in Wonderland or something like that. This is more like you can pick and choose what you want from it.
Yeah, and I think he picked up on that thing. It's kind of like what we've talked about with Ichabod and Toad, where they picked up on the good stuff and just enhanced it and made it better.
Yeah.
Sorry, Adventures of Ichabod Crane, not Ichabod and Toad.
Oh, I just thought you meant the film.
Well, yeah. But where he picked up the theme that we said we saw in the book was about it's okay to grow up, but you have to still accept your childhood memories and your childhood favorite things, and it's okay to still be a kid. And that's pretty much the whole basis of Disneyland. Yeah. Place for adults to still tap into their inner child and spend time with their children. So I think he took that and something that he's already marketed and shared with families and threw it in the film and just enhanced that message.
Definitely. What are you looking forward to seeing in the next film then, since we're right around the corner, just a few days away?
Oh, there's so many things, but I'll start with just one because I'm sure you and I are looking forward to similar things. But I'm really excited for the music. Emily Blunt is a fantastic performer, and with Lin-Manuel Miranda working on the music as well and being in it, I just can only imagine with how great Hamilton and Moana are. I can only imagine what the music is going to be like. I'm
surprised though, and I think this is correct, that Robert Sherman passed away in 2012, but that if Richard Sherman isn't really involved with it musically. I believe 2 other composers are doing.
I haven't done much research.
I think I had seen that it's mostly attributed to the 2 others. I'd hope that we'll see, like, if you like stay for the music part of the credits, that something's attributed to him. But I would have loved to have him be like fully on board and do the music. But that guy's kind of old, so I guess that he's like, I don't have time.
Maybe it'll be like Christopher Robin, where he shows up in the credits playing the piano.
Yes! Oh, I loved that moment. Please let there be a cameo. I cried a little bit at that part.
Same. I think it was the only person in the theater. And granted, I saw it a little later, so it wasn't like a packed theater. There weren't like a ton of people there, but I was like freaking out. And my sister and I think my mom were with me, and they were just like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "That's Sherman!" And then they finally connected it, and they were like, "Oh, that's so cool." But like they were just not on the same level as I was of excitement of seeing him in the film.
So what's interesting for me is it's the opposite, because I live in Orlando, and so I got to see Christopher Robin in the cinema at Disney Springs. Like, of course, the whole audience was into it. It was opening night. It was a sold-out theater, so I feel like there was a lot of people clapping and cheering. But I won't quite have that experience for Mary Poppins Returns, because I'm heading to Maryland in a few days to return home for Christmas, and I'm going to see it with my mom when I'm home. So it'll be interesting to see how the audience differs from like my usual Disney Springs, Marvel, or Disney huge fanatic audience versus a quiet Baltimore cinema.
Well, you and I can just call each other after and freak out, and it'll be fine.
Okay. I'm on board for that.
I am excited for the animation, like we talked about before. And now after reading the book, I'm excited to see like what other things I recognize that maybe they took from this first book and decided to integrate into the Mary Poppins Returns. I'm excited to see if they chose some other adventures that the Sherman Brothers and Walt Disney decided not to include the first time.
Yeah, I think I'm just excited overall, and Doug will definitely make fun of me because I was not on board with this movie initially when it was announced. I was like, ooh, like, do we need a sequel? Do we need to go there? But then once I saw that like full trailer that we're talking about with the animation, I told Doug, I was like, I'm so on board with this movie. And he's like, I just wanted on the record that I've been on board with it. since the beginning. I was like, all right, that's fair. So yeah, seeing just the preview had me so excited. And I was like, all right, this feels very in tune with the original, and such a great cast. I mean, of course, we mentioned Lin-Manuel Miranda and Emily Blunt, but like Meryl Streep, Angela Lansbury,
Dick Van Dyke makes a return.
Yes, Colin Firth, Julie Walters, like so many people. So I'm interested to see the other characters that come through.
Same, and I think they did it right, where they're not, whereas some of our other live actions are remakes.
Yes.
This is building on the story, and it's not meant to be a direct continuation or like super attached to the original film. It's its own project.
Yeah, I like that it's Michael's children, and so it's kind of, I think, gonna harken on that same thing of saving Mr. Banks, but it's a different Mr. Banks. It's Michael Banks.
I love that line in the trailer. She's like, I'm here to look after the Banks children, and the little kids are like, us? And she's like, oh yes, you too, because she means the older children, not, or like the original Jane and Michael.
Yes, so that theme seems like it'll be fun to explore.
Yeah, I'm very excited. You said you're seeing it this week. Are you going opening night?
No, probably. I think we fly into town opening night.
Okay. So
probably going to get tickets for like that weekend.
I'm hoping to also see it over break because school will be out in a couple days.
Yay.
So I'm not sure when yet, but I know my mom and my sister will definitely want to go see it. So Courtney, while we wait for the next film to come out, what are some other recommendations we can give our listeners if they really enjoy Mary Poppins?
Yes, if you want to fill your next 48 hours with Mary Poppins.
That's true, it is only 2 days.
Or build off of it in the future. I've mentioned it many times throughout the episode. Definitely worth revisiting Saving Mr. Banks. But I do want to give an acknowledgement to the bonus features on my Mary Poppins Blu-ray, which I believe stem from like the 40th anniversary DVD release. So they were on my digital copy and should be on that DVD. There were some really nice bonus features, and that's where I kind of like started my inquiry into the history. There was a portion about the stage adaptation, so with Ashley Brown, the original Mary Poppins on Broadway, like they did an interview with her and Richard Sherman and Cameron McIntosh and the lyricists and all those people. It was like about a 45-minute bonus feature. Then there was kind of a complimentary 50-minute bonus feature about the creation of Mary Poppins, talking about Walt's obtaining the rights to the book, and that's where I heard Richard Sherman mention the Betty Davis fun fact. But I think my favorite one was a 17-minute feature, which was just the premiere of the film at Grauman's Chinese Theater. So it's clips from television and what they were recording from radio. They put a note at the beginning that this was archival footage that was later found and then spliced together to make this bonus feature, kind of showing different people arriving at the premiere and their interviews as they walk the red carpet. I mean, I love red carpet features anyway. Like, I get really into the Golden Globes and the Oscars. So it just felt like that, but for Mary Poppins. And it was the true footage from 1964. So that was such a great find.
And I love some of those iconic photos of Julie Andrews with Walt, and there's like,
yes,
it has all these Disney characters showed up on the red carpet too, and it's very 1960s look, so they're kind of funny looking and very cartoony, and it's just kind of like, you never would have thought to see Disney characters. Like, could you imagine Mickey Mouse showing up to the premiere?
That'd be cool. But yeah, it doesn't really happen. Well, it was also just great to see the Chinese theater because it made me think of the Great Movie Ride, which was fun that Mary Poppins was in the Great Movie Ride, and that was based on the building where her film premiered. So
R.I.P.
Nice full circle. I know.
But kind of going back to that, speaking of those iconic photos, I am going to name drop the Life magazine special editions. I love these because they do give you those capture focus moments in history, and there is a whole chapter on the premiere in here, as well as talking about Walt's history, PL Travers that I talked about, the making of the film, and there's some great behind the scenes in here, as well as pictures of the cast. So lots of treasures in the Life magazine, and you can find that in grocery stores, bookstores. I found mine at Costco, and it was actually a lot cheaper than buying it off the shelf. So if you have a wholesale store near you, check that out. It makes these a lot more affordable.
Don't buy it on Amazon because it won't show up for... I should say I did actually receive my Mickey Mouse magazine like 3.5 weeks later after asking for a refund for it. It did show up if you were invested in that personal saga of mine. But yes, be responsible and buy it now at your grocery store.
So yeah, if you're a big Mary Poppins fan, I would definitely grab the commemorative edition and then also check out the other books. So here is the list. So after the initial Mary Poppins, there is Mary Poppins Comes Back, Mary Poppins Opens the Door, Mary Poppins in the Park, Mary Poppins from A to Z, and Mary Poppins in the Kitchen.
Quite a range of places that Mary Poppins is appearing.
Yeah.
We'll have to get to those at some point. Maybe for a Mary Poppins anniversary or so.
Yeah, we could do that.
A little mini episode. But I think that wraps us up for 2018. Thanks for being part of our journey as we kicked things off this year. We definitely have a lot more in store for you next year. We'll continue to commit to at least one episode per month, but hopefully some additional titles in the summer. So stay tuned to our social media channels for our January book, but we do have a preview of some other stuff that we plan to cover.
Courtney and I had so much fun planning out our coming year, and we're really excited for some things we have in store. And one of the earlier things we're going to do is I'm heading back to Walt Disney World in February of 2019. So we are going to take a look at the Birnbaum's official Disney planning guide for Walt Disney World, which is like the end-all be-all planning book. So talking about planning going to the parks.
Yeah, I think that'll be something a little different. I am most excited for when we'll celebrate Women's History Month in March with a title that has been on our must list since we started planning our podcast itself this summer, and that's Ink and Paint, The Women of Walt Disney's Animation.
We're also going to venture into a new medium, and we're looking forward to doing Dreamfinder and Figment graphic novels from Marvel Comics. We haven't tackled a comic yet, so that'll be fun.
I think also what will be highly anticipated this summer is the Kingdom Keeper series. We are going to do all 7 of those books, one at a time, but hopefully multiple throughout the summer, rounding out that season. And we have plenty of other titles, so stay tuned. In the meantime, you can, of course, follow us on social media. We are at Book of the Mouse on Twitter and Instagram, or you can reach out to us with some suggestions for next year at bookofthemouseclub@gmail.com. You can follow me, Courtney, on Instagram at GreatGuthsby and on Twitter at Courtney_Guth.
And you can follow me, Emily, on Instagram and Twitter at the same handle at Emily_McD.
Wonderful. So let's close ours out with a little quote to leave them through the new year.
All right, so this is coming from the Jolly Holiday chapter, or Disney's Jolly Holiday chapter, The Day Out, from the book. And this just stood out to me right from the beginning, and I loved this. So when she gets back from her adventure and Jane and Michael are asking about her day out, they thought it was boring. They're like, why would you want to just go have tea in a park? How is that a fairyland? And she responds and says, don't you know that everybody's got a fairyland of their own? And I just really liked that.
This is our little fairyland. So thank you for being a part of it. We hope everyone has a jolly holiday season.
Yes, great to hear from you again, listeners. Please keep up with us, and Happy New Year.
Bye.
Bye.
Book of the Mouse Club has no affiliation with the Walt Disney Company. The views and opinions expressed by hosts and participants are theirs and theirs alone. They do not represent the organizations or companies they happen to work for.